working with and for individuals with disabilities in both direct practice and public policy sectors. He was the executive director of the National Council on Disability. In 2006, let me say this slowly because I'm so in awe. In 2006, he received a Kennedy Foundation Public Policy Fellowship, which is incredible, in addition to all the other things that he's done, but that's unbelievable, to work on federal disability policy and legislation for the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. His previous experience also includes serving as project coordinator for the Wayman Center, University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, where he managed projects and advanced the rights of individuals with disabilities. He served as the site coordinator and director of TA, Technical Assistance, for the National Service Inclusion Project for the Association of University Centers on Disabilities. He received his master's degree of science in social work with an emphasis on public policy, two bachelor science degrees in national sciences from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And he is currently in the position of commissioner. He's the acting commissioner of AIDD. I give you Commissioner Aaron Bishop.
James, I want to thank you for the invite. You are to be commended for the work that you have done here in the state of Alabama. Helping to protect the rights of people with all types of disabilities across the entire state, as well as your predecessor, Dr. Gillespie, as well. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to be here with the Ridgway family. I want to congratulate you on the proclamation that was read. With all of the award recipients today, it's a pleasure to share the stage with you. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you in the room today. My remarks today are going to be a little different. I'm here to celebrate and pay homage to a wonderful system and program, being the protection and advocacy agencies. But in order to do so, I have to talk about where we all have come from, including not only the system, but me myself. And to do so, I'm going to speak from the heart. I'm going to talk about the PNA and disability and how both have a special meaning and place in my heart, and why that's the case. People have asked me why I've gotten into this field, what drew me to it. And I'm going to provide you some insight today. And I typically don't do this and I don't go into detail, but I need to. And because the reason starts here. And when I say here, I specifically mean here in Montgomery, Alabama. The reason I came into this field and got to this field had nothing to do with the people with disabilities in my family. We actually didn't recognize that the people in my family had disabilities. It was that my grandmother couldn't hear as well. My cousin, who experienced an injury in Vietnam, simply was a paraplegic. We didn't talk about it. We went on with life. He went to work. He had his accessible van. It was a part of our daily lives. So why here in Montgomery, Alabama? Like many African Americans, my family, at least on one side of the family, migrated to the north. It was from Florida to Illinois, Illinois to Wisconsin. So how many of you are here are from Montgomery? Oh, not a few of you. So let me know if any of this information sounds familiar. He lived across from the old Alabama State University Stadium, where you could sneak under the fence and go to football games, at 205 and 215 Carter Hill Road. And we always thought he was saying Carter. But it's C-A-R-T-E-R, not Carter. He went to Booker T. Washington School, 1st through 7th grade, where his principal was Mr. C.T. Smiley. His 5th grade teacher was Miss Townsend, and his 6th grade teacher was Miss Lee. He went to Church of Christ in Montgomery on Gale Street. He shopped at Mr. Otis's store on Gale Street and at the A&P over in Cloverdale. He tells us about the time when the family next door to my great-grandmother's house had moonshine in the backyard, and police were coming and doing a raid. She knew about it, and took the moonshine and brought it over to my great-grandmother's chicken coop, and she saw it. So she told my dad and his cousins to go and get the moonshine and take it back, which they did, all except for one bottle. And they took that bottle down to some construction sites, and they were selling it to people for 10 cents a shot. Till this day, I have family right over here at 1032 Pelham. And over on South Market, as well as a few other places. Thanksgiving, I come back every year when I was a kid for the Turkey Day Classic to watch ASU and Tuskegee. Go ASU. And finally, all I have to say is roll tide. But then there's also this. When he could afford to go to the movies, he went to the Perkins and the Ritz back in the day. He went there because those were the only two places he could go. He remembers sitting in the electric chair when it was taken to Booker T. Washington School, because it was taken to all the black schools at that time, and the flip being switched as a form of social control.
Oh, God.
He witnessed the aftermath of the bombing of Martin Luther King Jr.'s house, and remembers being frightened not only because of the bombing and what happened, but because he had never seen so many African-American males with guns in his life, and it scared him to death. He knew the Parks family, and was part of the boycott. He knew and would see that in order to break the boycott, he recalls police officers pulling over the individuals taking folks to work because they said that they were drivers who were acting as taxis without a license. He remembers the first 2 black police officers because they had white supervisors who had to ride with them because they couldn't ride by themselves. He grew up with children with disabilities in his neighborhood. They didn't go to school. They didn't leave the house. He saw them on Sundays when they were going to church. And the only reason he saw them on Sundays was because of fear. Fear of what would happen if one of these young children did something that was not socially acceptable at the time and where they would end up. And he remembers blacks commenting on the license plates of police cars, which had the term M-U-N in them. And all the black folks here in town said that meant murder you, N-word. So when I say I'm from here, I'm from here. He moved to Milwaukee at the age of 15. He received his first English textbook, because he didn't have one at Booker T. He went to the service, moved to Madison, Wisconsin, married, and became a police officer. So now I'm going to fast forward to 1998. I'm in graduate school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I knew a lot of my history. I knew about civil rights, I knew about discrimination. My grandfather integrated golf courses in Rockford, Illinois. My grandmother fought for jobs for women and people of color in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My mom fought for us kids in Madison, it not being very racially diverse. And when her 2 kids, who were brown and black, were accused of throwing snowballs at a car, when we were with her, she came to fight for us. So So of course I knew what civil rights was. I knew what discrimination was. And so I go to the Wiseman Center, which is just like the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and the Civitan Center, which is the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. And I go to the Leadership, Education, and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities program. And it changed my life. And I'm going to clean this up a little bit because of where we are. I realized that I didn't know stuff from Shinola. I remember sitting in the Latin class and hearing about Public Law 94-142, the Education of the Handicap Act. And it was not until 1975 when kids with disabilities had the legal right to go to school with everybody else. And I sat there and thought to myself, wait a minute. Brown v. Board was 54. Didn't that cover everybody? And I quickly learned that no. The landmark cases of Park versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and Mills versus the Board of Education were based off of Brown v. Board. But it didn't include everybody. I started learning about things like Not in My Backyard, and people not wanting group homes built in their neighborhoods. And when my father became a police officer, we were living in Madison, Wisconsin. We were supposed to move to Kenosha. And every time he would go to Kenosha to rent an apartment for his infant son, 6-year-old son, and wife, didn't have internet at the time, so he'd read the newspaper, go and knock on the door, and all of a sudden that apartment was not available anymore. He did this enough so that his supervisor, the sergeant, went and did it on his behalf and found out that the actual apartment was for rent. He was white. I learned about the ADA and how people with disabilities didn't have the right. They were not a protected class until 1990. And I thought about the Civil Rights Acts. And that's when it hit me. And that's why I was asked to be here today. Because I realized that the movements were all the same. It was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, "It is not possible to be in favor of justice for some people and not to be in favor of justice for all people. Discrimination is discrimination is discrimination." And that's when I joined the movement. Our country has always sent its citizens dual messages. It has said that people deserved opportunities to excel, and at the same time, that people were not worthy or should not be given these opportunities. If we look at Darwin's theory of origin, in the Mid-Atlantic Monthly's newspaper that had an article tract titled "The Mulatto Factor," arguing that the presence of mixed-race blacks with superior intelligence, white blood, was the cause of race turmoil at the time. This was at the same time that we saw the creation of the Eugenics Records Office in New York, the backbone of a campaign to promote sterilization of individuals who unfortunately were labeled feeble-minded and of inferior stock. There was also limited interracial marriage and the immigration of Jews. Through a series of court findings such as Plessy v. Ferguson, Buck v. Bell, people of color and people with disabilities have been had their civil rights systematically violated between the 1890s and 1960s. And unfortunately, it was in this capital city, our home, the first seat of government for the Confederacy, and on the steps of this State House, which George C. Wallace said in 1963, "Segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever." That speech was not just about blacks. It was about sustaining the status quo. It was about keeping groups such as blacks in our place, keeping people with disabilities in safe places away from where they could do harm to others. It was about keeping women in the kitchen, and for people who were LGBTQ, the closet didn't exist. The Declaration of Independence, in its most important passage, claims, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, happiness, life, liberty, and disabilities, the path to full citizenship and inclusion in American society is the same as that road traveled by women and people of color. And for the PNAs and the rest of the DD Act programs, where did this all start? It started at the same time in the civil rights movement of the 1960s, and it was built out of love and civil rights. It was a sister unlike any other, a sister who had a president for a brother, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who, after her brother was inaugurated, asked him to do something to help their sister, who was diagnosed with an intellectual disability, and other Americans diagnosed with this disability. It was based on the family realizing that Rhea Rosemary had strengths, that she had abilities. And they realized that this opportunity should be afforded to other individuals. It was during this era of enlightenment, establishment being questioned, and civil rights for all Americans being put at the forefront. The principles of the DD Act and the authorities of the PNAs are based in civil rights and human rights movement. Civil rights and human rights movement of the 1960s and the women's rights suffrage movement in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And this is the backdrop of the President's Blue Ribbon Commission. And out of that, we saw in 1963 the passage of the Developmental Disabilities Act and the first program, which was the University Centers for Excellence. In 1970, it was the second program, the Developmental Disability Councils. And it was in 1975, after the nation had witnessed the horrific events at Willowbrook, which occurred in 1972, and the phrase hell on earth and the last great disgrace were derived. And it was decided in 1975 that the PNA system needed to be developed, that we needed to have something that was similar to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, as well as the Southern Poverty Law Center, specifically for people with disabilities. Protection and advocacy for the legal and human rights of people with disabilities is the work that the PNAs do, focusing on people who have been neglected, abused, denied access to services, and the like. And if we look at ADAP, it is everything that we wanted in a PNA and more. As we have heard, ADAP was founded as the Alabama Developmental Disabilities Advocacy Program, ADDAP, in 1976, a clinical law program at the University of Alabama Law School. In 1977, it hired its first director and attorneys and developed its first strategic plan. This was so critical at that time that the president of the university attended ADAP's first task force meeting. And the rest is history. You all have seen it unfold, with a mission of providing quality legal-based advocacy service to Alabamians with disabilities in order to protect, promote, and expand their rights, as well as having a vision of a society where persons with disabilities are valued, exercise self-determination through meaningful choices, and have equal opportunity. Legal advocacy for people with disabilities in Alabama started. In 1978, we had the first published special education in Alabama, A Right Not a Favor, and a beginning to focus on special education advocacy. In the 1980s, you saw proliferation of cases being won. Appleyard Wallace, the case enforcing the rights of Medicaid and nursing home beneficiaries. 1993, along with counsel representing all skills children in Alabama, ADAP presented a class of all children entitled to special education in ACE v. Folsom. 1996, ADAP won the ADAP v. Tartwater case, enforcing its access authority against state hospitals in mental health. We've all heard and know about Wyatt. And respect all of the work that has been done. 2008, when ADAP published At What Cost? Partlow's Legacy of Shame. Since being founded as an advocacy organization authorized to represent only persons with developmental disabilities at first confined in institutions, ADAP now represents a broad range of persons with disabilities who live in the community and remaining facilities in the state. ADAP is involved in a range of issues relating to developmental disabilities, mental illness, traumatic brain injury, assistive technology, voting, Social Security rights, as well as a range of other disability-related services. This is what the P&A system was designed to do. Personally, we could not be more proud of the work that James and his staff have done to be able to accomplish what they have to push forward civil rights and human rights here in the state of Alabama. But before I close, which I'm about to do, I want to urge ADAP and all of you to remember my words in the beginning of the speech about where these movements started. And although our paths are similar, unfortunately, they have not meshed. Kurt Decker, who couldn't be here today at the National Disability Rights Network, is taking this work seriously. So is Andy Imperato, the Executive Director of the Association of University Centers on Disabilities. We are at the Administration on Disabilities, and the rest of the states do as well. And the reason is, we can't do this by ourselves anymore. We can't go it alone. Our movement, sheer numbers-wise, is simply too small. To have an impact and dent on social justice, we have to work together and in collaboration with larger civil rights organizations and groups, such as the Southern Poverty Law Center, and with the organization ARISE, which I know all of you are very familiar with. We need to make sure that issues such as disproportionality in school, in which we have too many African American and Latino boys labeled as having an intellectual disability and don't receive enough services, and have an underrepresentation of individuals, Latino and African American boys with the label of autism, who typically receive greater services. These African American and Latino boys are the same boys that are secluded and restrained in schools, who are then suspended and expelled from schools, and then end up going where? We in the disability community have to do a better job at paying attention to issues as they relate to race, ethnicity, LGBTQ, gender, and the like. And we need to do a better job at reaching out to our friends in the traditional civil rights community, working with the NAACP, the Urban League, your Latino Chamber of Commerce, and the like, to get them to start paying attention to disability issues, because once again, they're one and the same. This is the only way for us to truly achieve the reality that our forefathers were thinking when they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And coming together as a people is the only way that this is going to happen. However, given what you all and what ADAP has done throughout the years, the coming together, the having conversations, the camaraderie that you have, knowing that the civil rights movement started here and continued here via Wyatt, you guys are already well down this path of working all together. So with that, I want to congratulate you all for the work that you are doing, and I look forward to seeing the work that you are going to do over the next 40 years. So I thank you all very much for your time.
our